Long before roads crossed West Africa. Before maps gave names to kingdoms. A river carried life. The Niger River. Its waters fed farms. Its currents carried boats filled with fish, salt, and gold. Its banks became home to villages where families worked, traded, and dreamed of a better future. For one young boatman, it was simply another day. He untied his wooden canoe, loaded his cargo, and pushed away from the riverbank. He did not know it then, but he was living at the beginning of one of Africa's greatest stories. As he traveled along the Niger, the world around him was changing. Small villages were becoming busy towns. Markets were growing larger. Merchants were arriving from distant lands. Caravans crossed the Sahara carrying salt, cloth, books, and horses. Boats carried gold, grain, and people along the river. A kingdom was rising. Before long, it would become the largest empire in African history. Its armies would conquer vast lands. Its merchants would grow rich through trade. Its scholars would turn Timbuktu into one of the world's greatest centers of learning. Its rulers would become known far beyond Africa. But no empire rises forever. And no empire lasts forever. One day, news would spread along the Niger. An army was crossing the Sahara. It carried a new kind of weapon. One that would change the future of West Africa. How did a small kingdom on the banks of a river become the greatest empire Africa had ever seen? And how did it lose that greatness in just one generation? Welcome to the African Archive, where we bring Africa's history to life through careful research and powerful storytelling. If you enjoy discovering the people, kingdoms, civilizations, and mysteries that shaped our world, subscribe and join us as we uncover the stories history should never forget. This is not just the story of kings, or battles, or gold. It is the story of farmers who worked the land, boatmen who crossed the river, merchants who crossed the desert, teachers who filled libraries with knowledge, families who built thriving communities. Together, they built an empire. This is the story of the Songhai Empire. Chapter 1. A kingdom on the Niger. The sun had barely risen. Mist floated above the Niger River as a young boatman pushed his canoe into the water. For him, the river was not a wonder of the world. It was home. It fed his family. It carried his neighbors to market. And it connected villages that stretched far beyond the horizon. Like countless others, he believed tomorrow would be much like today. He could not have known that he was living at the beginning of an empire. Every great civilization begins with a place. For the Songhai people, that place was the Niger River. Flowing through the heart of West Africa, the river brought life wherever it went. Its waters fed crops. Its fish filled nets. Its gentle currents carried people and goods from one community to another. Long before Songhai became an empire, small settlements stood along its banks. Families farmed the rich soil. Fishermen cast their nets into the river. Blacksmiths shaped iron into tools. Potters made jars for storing grain and water. Children learned the skills of their parents. Life was built around the rhythm of the river. At the center of this growing world stood the city of Gao. What began as a small trading town slowly became one of the most important cities in West Africa. Merchants arrived with goods from distant places. Some traveled by boat along the Niger. Others crossed the vast Sahara Desert in long camel caravans. They brought salt from the north, fine cloth, horses, metal goods, and books. In return, they carried away gold, leather, kola nuts, and other valuable products from West Africa. The people of Gao soon realized that they lived in a special place. The river connected them to nearby communities. The desert connected them to distant kingdoms. Together, they created opportunities that few places could match. For many years, Songhai was overshadowed by the powerful Mali Empire. Its rulers paid tribute. Its people continued their daily lives. They farmed. They traded. They waited. Then, slowly, things began to change. The Mali Empire started to weaken. Its control over distant lands became harder to maintain. Local leaders saw an opportunity. Songhai regained its independence. The small kingdom that had once lived in the shadow of another empire was ready to shape its own future. Our young boatmen noticed the changes. More boats filled the river. More traders crowded the markets. More soldiers appeared along the roads. People spoke of a leader who wanted to unite the lands along the Niger. Something important was beginning. The river that had always carried food and trade would soon carry an empire. And the man who would make that dream a reality was about to rise. His name was Sunni. In the next chapter, we meet the warrior king who transformed Songhai from a growing kingdom into the largest empire Africa had ever known. Chapter 2. The Warrior King. The story spread quickly along the Niger River. Traders whispered about them in busy markets. Boatmen carried them from one town to another. Soldiers spoke of a fearless leader who seemed impossible to stop. His name was Sunni. When he became ruler of Songhai in 1464, the kingdom was still small compared to what it would become. But Sunni had a much bigger vision. He believed Songhai could become the greatest power in West Africa. And he was determined to make it happen. He built a strong army. His cavalry moved swiftly across the open land. His soldiers were well trained and disciplined. But Sunni understood something many rulers overlooked. The Niger River could be just as powerful as an army on land. So he built a river fleet. War canoes carried soldiers along the river, allowing them to move quickly, defend important towns, and surprise their enemies. It gave Songhai an advantage that few kingdoms could match. Our young boatman watched these changes with amazement. The river that had once carried mostly fishermen and traders was now filled with soldiers. New forts appeared along the riverbanks. The kingdom was growing stronger. Sunni soon turned his attention to two of the most important cities in West Africa. The first was Timbuktu. Already famous for trade and learning, the city was a prize that every powerful ruler wanted to control. After capturing Timbuktu, Sunni continued his campaign. Next came Jen, another wealthy trading city connected to the Niger River. Its capture strengthened Songhai's control over commerce and transportation. With each victory, the empire expanded. More communities came under Songhai's rule. Trade routes became safer. Merchants could travel with greater confidence. The wealth of the empire continued to grow. But Sunni was more than a conqueror. He understood that an empire could not survive on battles alone. It needed secure trade routes, protected farms, and stable communities. While some historical accounts praise him as a brilliant military leader who united the empire, others, especially some contemporary Muslim scholars, criticized parts of his rule and leadership. These different views remind us that history is often seen through different eyes. Great leaders are rarely remembered in exactly the same way by everyone. To the young boatmen, however, one thing was clear. Life was changing. The markets were busier than ever. Caravans arrived from distant lands. Goods flowed along the river in numbers he had never seen before. The kingdom he had known as a child was becoming an empire. Yet the greatest years of Songhai were still ahead. After Sunni death, another ruler would take the throne. He would not be remembered mainly for winning battles. He would be remembered for building institutions, strengthening government, encouraging learning, and leading Songhai into its golden age. His name was Askia Muhammad. And under his leadership, the empire would reach heights even Sunni could scarcely have imagined. Chapter 3. The Golden Age of Askia Muhammad. When Sunni died in 1492, the future of the Songhai Empire was uncertain. He had built a vast empire through courage and military skill. But building an empire is one challenge. Keeping it together is another. Not long after his death, a new leader emerged. His name was Askia Muhammad. In 1493, he took control of the empire and began a new chapter in Songhai's history. Where Sunni had expanded the empire with the sword, Askia Muhammad strengthened it through organization. He believed that a great empire needed more than brave soldiers. It needed good government. So he divided the empire into provinces. He appointed trusted governors to oversee different regions. Officials collected taxes. Judges settled disputes. Local leaders worked with the central government to keep peace and maintain order. For ordinary people, these changes mattered. Our young boatman noticed that trade became more organized. The river was busier than ever. Markets grew larger. Travel became safer. Merchants arrived from places he had only heard about in stories. Some came from North Africa. Others crossed the Sahara with long camel caravans. They carried salt, cloth, books, horses, and finely crafted goods. They returned with gold, leather, kola nuts, and other valuable products. The empire prospered. But Askia Muhammad wanted Songhai to be known for more than wealth. He wanted it to be respected for knowledge. He supported Islamic learning and encouraged scholars to teach throughout the empire. He also made a famous pilgrimage to Mecca, the holy city of Islam. The journey showed the wider world that Songhai was a powerful and respected kingdom. When he returned, he strengthened ties with other Muslim rulers and scholars, bringing new ideas back to West Africa. Yet despite the empire's growing reputation, life still depended on ordinary people. Farmers worked from sunrise to sunset. Craftsmen shaped iron, leather, and wood into useful tools. Women traded in busy markets, helping families earn a living. Boatmen carried people and goods along the Niger River. Teachers welcomed eager students into places of learning. Every person played a part in the empire's success. As the years passed, Songhai reached the height of its power. Its borders stretched across thousands of kilometers. Its government was respected. Its trade routes were thriving. Its cities were growing. Many believed the empire would continue to grow for generations. But there was one city that stood above all the others. A city where knowledge was treasured as much as gold. A city whose name became known across Africa and the Islamic world. That city was Timbuktu. In the next chapter, we'll discover how Timbuktu became one of the greatest centers of learning in history, and why students traveled across deserts to study there. Chapter 4. Timbuktu, the city of knowledge. As our young boatman guided his canoe toward Timbuktu, he expected to find another busy trading city. Instead, he found something much greater. The streets were alive with merchants from distant lands. Camel caravans arrived after crossing the vast Sahara Desert. Boats unloaded goods from every corner of the empire. People spoke different languages. They wore different clothes. They came from different cultures. Yet they all met in one remarkable city. Timbuktu had become the beating heart of the Songhai Empire. To many visitors, it was famous for its wealth. But to those who knew it best, its greatest treasure was knowledge. Across the city stood schools and mosques where students gathered to learn. The most famous was Sanko. Along with other centers of learning, it attracted scholars from across West Africa and beyond. Students traveled hundreds, even thousands, of kilometers to study there. They learned law, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, history, poetry, and theology. Lessons often took place in mosque courtyards or under the guidance of respected teachers. Books were copied carefully by hand. Every page required patience and skill. Some families treasured manuscripts so deeply that they passed them from one generation to the next. Owning a collection of books became a sign of learning and respect. In some cases, books were so valuable that they could be worth more than other expensive goods. Our young boatman watched as scholars debated ideas with their students. He saw merchants carrying bundles of handwritten manuscripts alongside bags of salt and gold. It reminded him that Songhai traded in more than riches. It traded in ideas. Under Askia Muhammad, Timbuktu continued to flourish. The empire protected trade routes. Learning was encouraged. Scholars found a place where they could teach, write, and preserve knowledge. The city's reputation spread across the Islamic world. People who had never seen West Africa had heard of Timbuktu. They knew it as a place where learning was honored, where questions were welcomed, and where knowledge could change a person's life. It was one of the greatest intellectual centers of its time. But while scholars filled the classrooms of Timbuktu, danger was quietly growing beyond the empire's borders. Far to the north, another kingdom had begun to look towards Songhai. Its rulers had heard of the empire's wealth, its gold, its thriving trade, and its famous cities. They wanted a share of that prosperity. Soon, an army would begin a long march across the Sahara Desert. Its soldiers carried weapons unlike anything most of Songhai's warriors had faced before. The empire that had spent generations rising to greatness was about to face its greatest test. In the next chapter, we witness the Battle of Tondibi, the conflict that changed the future of the Songhai Empire forever. Chapter 5. The battle that changed everything. The rumors began as whispers. Merchants arriving from the north spoke of an army crossing the Sahara Desert. Some people laughed. The journey was too long. The desert was too dangerous. Surely no army would attempt it. But the rumors did not disappear. They grew stronger. One evening, as our young boatman tied his canoe to the riverbank, he heard the news everyone had feared. The Moroccan army had entered Songhai. Its ruler, Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur, wanted control of the empire's wealth, especially the trade in gold that had made West Africa famous. The invading force was much smaller than Songhai's army. But it carried something that could change the course of the battle. Firearms. Many of Songhai's soldiers fought with spears, swords, bows, and cavalry. They were brave and experienced. But many had never faced guns on a battlefield. In 1591, the two armies met at Tondibi, in present-day Mali. The Songhai army greatly outnumbered its enemy. By size alone, victory seemed certain. Then the battle began. Songhai's warriors charged forward with courage. The Moroccans answered with gunfire. The sound echoed across the battlefield. Smoke filled the air. Confusion spread through the ranks. According to historical accounts, Songhai's commanders even tried driving a herd of cattle toward the Moroccan lines. But the noise of the gunfire frightened the animals. Instead of charging the enemy, they turned back, creating disorder among Songhai's own forces. Despite their determination, the empire's army could not overcome the advantage of firearms and disciplined volleys. By the end of the battle, Songhai had been defeated. The victory shocked West Africa. For generations, Songhai had seemed almost unstoppable. Now, the greatest empire in the region had been broken. Our young boatman felt the change almost immediately. The river was quieter. Fewer traders arrived. Some markets stood half empty. Caravans became less frequent. People spoke with uncertainty instead of confidence. The empire that had united so many lands began to break apart. Cities that had once looked to Gaul for leadership now struggled to govern themselves. Trade routes became less secure. Regional leaders sought their own paths. Although the Moroccans captured important cities such as Gao and Timbuktu, they found it difficult to rule such a vast territory from across the Sahara. In time, their control weakened as well. Songhai did not disappear overnight. Its people remained. Its communities survived. But the empire itself never regained its former strength. For our boatmen, the greatest loss was not only the fall of a government. It was the feeling that an age had come to an end. The bustling river that had carried the hopes of an empire now carried memories of what had been. Yet even as political power faded, something far more lasting survived. The books in Timbuktu. The knowledge preserved by generations of scholars. The traditions of the people. And the story of an empire that had once shown the world what Africa could achieve. In our final chapter, we'll explore the enduring legacy of the Songhai Empire, and why its influence can still be felt across West Africa today. Chapter 6. The Empire that Still Speaks. Empires rise. Empires fall. But some leave behind ideas that outlive their borders. That was the story of Songhai. After the Battle of Tondibi, the empire slowly broke apart. The rulers who came after could not rebuild what had been lost. The great cities remained. The people remained. But the empire that had once stretched across much of West Africa was gone. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. The young boatman who had watched Songhai rise was now an old man. His hair had turned grey. His hands had grown rough from a lifetime on the Niger River. He had seen the empire at its greatest. And he had lived long enough to see its fall. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the river, his grandson asked him a simple question. Did there really used to be an empire here? The old man smiled. Then he pointed to the river. It is still here, he said. He pointed toward the busy market. So are the traders. He pointed toward the road leading to Timbuktu. So are the scholars. The empire may be gone, but what it built is still alive. And he was right. The Songhai Empire gave West Africa more than powerful kings. It strengthened trade across the Sahara. It connected distant peoples through the Niger River. It encouraged learning that made Timbuktu famous around the world. Its scholars preserved thousands of manuscripts that historians still study today. Its systems of government influenced the kingdoms that followed. Its story reminds us that Africa has long been a place of innovation, leadership, and learning. Today, the lands that once formed Songhai are part of countries such as Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and several others. The empire no longer appears on modern maps. But its history lives on in the cultures, languages, traditions, and memories of the people who call those places home. Visitors still travel to Gao. They still visit Timbuktu. They still study the manuscripts that survived wars, changing governments, and the passing of time. These are not just reminders of the past. They are proof that knowledge can outlive even the greatest empires. The Songhai Empire teaches us an important lesson. True greatness is not measured only by the size of an empire. It is measured by what it leaves behind. Songhai left behind ideas, trade, learning, and a story that deserves to be remembered. Thank you for joining us on the African Archive as we explore the remarkable journey of the Songhai Empire. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to the African Archive and turn on notifications. Together, we'll continue uncovering the people, kingdoms, civilizations, and remarkable stories that shaped Africa and helped shape the world. Because history is not only found in monuments, or ancient cities, or the names of kings. Sometimes, it flows quietly through a river, carried from one generation to the next, waiting for someone to listen. And among Africa's greatest stories, the Songhai Empire will always have a voice.